It's the last time you're going to hear that song, so take it or leave it. Hey, happy Father's Day. My name's Carlos. If we haven't met, we're in our final week, like Dee said, of this conversation called We Are the Church, and it's really this last piece of an ongoing conversation we come back to a couple times a year where we explore, like, what's it look like to be the church? Who is the church? How does the church operate? Why is it so hard to be in community? And so I'm excited kind of for how we'll wrap it up today. Dee said, save your nap for later. If you need it now, take it now. No judgment, but I can see you all. It's a small room and it's well lit. So, but after this series, we're going to turn into an ongoing series we've been in for a few years called Practicing the Way, where we look at disciplines that are tied to the historic practice of the Christian life and how that matters today in like the modern, postmodern, technological information age world that we live in. Now, I was thinking about this kind of closeout message and the reality that if you love the English language, like love it, like the function and the formality and the structure, I know that I might drive you a little bit crazy on a typical Sunday morning, especially if you take notes in your message notes and some of the things that show up on the screen. And it's not for, I'm not apologizing, by the way. It's not for lack of effort. It's for lack of precision. There's some things that I just struggle with, and I only have so much time, but I want to be clear. Like, the language matters to me. It matters a lot, and words can be confusing, and words can add depth, and some words get all dried out, and they need to be rehydrated in our lives. And so what I want to do this morning is just start by looking at two words that will matter in this final conversation we have about being the church. And I think these words can be confused. Also, by the time I'm done, you might be more confused than you were at the start, or you might think I'm more confused. And so let's just walk through this. The first word is this: it's easy. So easy is something that takes little effort, but easy can be very complicated. So some things are just easy. It doesn't mean they're not complicated. They just don't take a lot of effort, right? Like gaining weight is easy. Just eat more. For most of us, just eat more calories than you expend, right? Then takes a little effort. It can be complicated, though. We'll get to that in a second. Now, the other word I want to look at, which you might think these are synonyms, but I want to challenge you. I don't think they are, is this: simple. Not complicated, but it can be very, very, very easy. It can be. So maybe a way to illustrate this would be vision, right? How we see. When light hits the retina, that light-sensitive layer at the back of your eye, you have these photoreceptors that take the light and turn it into electrical signals. I make up words sometimes. And then these signals travel from the retina through the optic nerve to your brain, where your brain then turns that signal that started as light spectrum and became electricity, turns that signal into the image that you see. This is easy. How many of you are trying to see what you're seeing right now? I mean, some of you are like, but generally, we just see. It's all that complex eye stuff just happens. It's very complicated, but very easy. Let's compare that, on the other hand, to running a marathon. Now, running a marathon is simple, but not easy. Now, why would I say it's simple? Because people do it all the time. People of all sorts of body shapes and athletic ability, and people with different backgrounds of like fitness and not. They run marathons because they map out a training program, and they start with a few miles, and they build it up, and they build endurance, and they run it at a pace that works for their body and for their training. And at the end of the day, they're able to go out and they're able to cover these 26 miles. And they're able to do that because it was simple. But was it easy? It was never easy. I don't think it was easy. Although I was thinking about this. Like, I'm 50, right? And I've got a daughter who's 24. And I didn't run a half marathon recently, full disclosure, but my wife did. And so she was training. Emily went on this training program and worked her way towards it. And we were really worried that Anna wasn't going to run the half marathon because she wasn't training. And then maybe like 4 or 5 weeks before, she's like, I got a run in today. It was a mile. And we're like, oh. Don't buy her a registration for this race. And then she's like, a week later, I ran 3 miles. We're like, what's she doing? And then like a day later, she's like, I ran 6 miles. We're like, wait a second. And then she just showed up and ran a half marathon. And the final 3 miles, she said to her mom, is it okay if I leave you? And she took off and ran 8-minute miles for her final 3 miles. So being a little older makes a difference in this one. But either way, we can all run a marathon. It's simple, but it takes effort. Okay. I want to see if you understand the distinction. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is something that is simple but not easy, that you've encountered in your life, that you see around you. Turn to your neighbor, chat about this. We'll be back in 1 minute. All right, take 10 seconds. Okay, so third message in a conversation called We Are the Church, looking at simple and easy and how these play together. I'm going to go somewhere with all this. And if you're really confused right now, I can't guarantee you're going to be less confused. But we're going to walk through this, all right? So the whole conversation we've had has led to what does the family of the church look like? But I want to start by revisiting something I said last week. It's just sort of the overt structures of Eastwind, all right? So we are a church that exists for the next door neighbor and the next generation. So as a church community, we're followers of Jesus who gather together, but in our heart is always that like the next door neighbor, the guests, those who wouldn't consider themselves church, they matter. They're valued here. Some of you, that's you. You're sitting here right now. You might have come on Father's Day for that reason or other things, but that matters. And also for the next generation. We'll get to that in a moment. But one of the things I love about this church is there are folks who have a long history in the church, and there are certain traditions and certain expectations and certain values that they would love to see held higher in this church. And they say, but I'm willing to set that aside so we can make room for the next generation here. That's like a huge sacrifice. And I value that, and I see that, and I love this church for that. Now, we describe our mission. So churches have a mission. If you're not familiar with the Bible and how this whole thing came about, this message is that Jesus Christ, before he ascended, spoke to his close followers after his resurrection. And he said, I want you to go into the world and make disciples. I want you to baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And last week we had baptisms up here. I want you to teach them to obey everything I have commanded. And then he says, and surely I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. And it's this kind of beautiful but very world-altering command. That is called the Great Commission. If you go to a church, every church has kind of their own version of saying that. And so ours is pretty, I think, straightforward. After we know in our heartbeat that we want to be a church that exists for the next door neighbor and the next generation, well, okay, but how do we talk about our Great Commission? We say, look, Eastwind is a church where we inspire each other to follow Jesus, deepen our faith and relationship with him, to love our neighbor and reach the next generation. So it's kind of anchored on these 5 words: inspire, follow, deepen, love, reach. And then there's 5 spaces where we practice that, 5 environments where we see that come alive, and we call those our 5 pillars. They're on the wall in the lobby. It's Sundays, which for us is just, it's the phrase for who we are right now, the gathering of the church. It's our Sunday experience together. It's life groups, these adult small groups, where you come together to be known, to connect, to care, and they don't happen in the summer, most of them. They're about 30 weeks a year, but our life groups, serving in the life of the church. Right now, if you have a junior high or elementary little one, there's a volunteer somewhere making space for that, so you can be here. The band works together. There's folks who come midweek and prepare this room and this property that we have. There's coffee that's made. There's volunteers who come as youth mentors on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, serving in the life of the church. And then there's that kids and youth. It's one of our 5 core commitments here. And then Uplift. This is our outreach to our neighbors. It's the significant amount of time and money that this community gives with no strings attached to the neighborhood and the community, from our city organizations to nonprofits we partner with. So that's like kind of tactically Eastwind. So if you're a guest today and you're like, what's this church about? What are their commitments? You can see that there. And week 1 then in the We Are the Church, and it feels a little bit like class right now. We'll get through it, right? But we said we are designed for secure connection. That's our bottom human line. It's like the integrity of the human experience is we're not intended to go alone. Genesis chapters 1 through 3 tell us a story of how God designs us and creates us to be known and connected. And the church is a family God's solution to the disconnection is something called the church. And many of you have experienced that. Others of you would say, I don't feel, I come here, I sit, I feel very disconnected. And that's a reality. That's part of why we have this conversation, right? And then week 2, we said, okay, so if we're designed for secure connection in the church as a family, then why is it so hard to connect? Like, shouldn't important things just be simple and easy? Oh, we get back into, maybe it is simple, but it's not easy. It takes effort. And the challenge for us, and last week and this week, we're just looking at core human experiences in community. The challenge is this: it's fear can keep us from connecting. And fear is not always the absence of faith, but it's often putting our faith in the wrong thing. And it produces within us this hesitation in how we live our lives, and we start to hedge our bets, and we start to protect our outcomes. And we're going to end by going from fear to talking about worry and trust. And I just want to say, I think we can all agree with this, right? Trust is better than worry. That's a winning, I think that's a winning statement for all of us. We all wish we could trust more and worry less, but the challenge is that worry is easy. Worry takes no effort. I mean, some of us, you know that. You're like, last night, I was laying in bed and worry filled my body and my mind, and I didn't even want to worry, and it was just there, and I slept, and I kind of was in a fit as I slept, and I woke up, and the first thought in my head was something about an uncertain future or a conversation I need to have that's causing me some anxiety. So worry's easy. Doesn't take any effort. And trust is simple. That's why I start with that conversation. Trust is simple, but it's going to take work. And so that's what I want to talk about over the next few minutes. I want to define these real quick, though, so we have an operating definition, then we'll stop the class side of this. Worry, a state of anxiety and uncertainty over actual or potential problems. And after the last service, someone came up to me. They were sitting like right here, and they were taking notes. They're like, I was taking notes, and how fast you talk and how energetic you are was totally stressing me out. And I was like, oh, so I'm sorry, okay? But it's a state of anxiety or uncertainty over actual or potential problems. So it might work like this. You've got a low-grade anxiety or a high-grade anxiety that emerges, and it causes this concern. The concern takes shape in your life, and it creates this unease. Everything now you're doing the rest of that day, you're thinking about that concern, which hasn't yet happened. And then the potential anticipated problem is just out there. Then the event happens, and the thing you were worried about didn't happen. And this is what your brain goes, yeah, worry works. Because I worried all day, and I did the thing, and it didn't happen. So worry is like a foolproof way to make sure bad things don't happen. Let's contrast that with trust. A confident belief in someone or something to do what is right, deliver what is promised, and to be the same every time in spite of circumstances. I have this conviction that one of the reasons we wrestle with really talking about and understanding trust is we treat it like a soft emotion, like a feeling, or like a sentiment, like I love puppies and I trust. Trust is a hard skill. If you want to be a person that has people who trust you, that's a hard daily effort and skill. To be somebody who is repeatable, does what's right, deliver what's promised, and is the same every time in every circumstance. And my conviction is going to be that is what God offers us, that he is that. He's repeatable, he's trustworthy, he's the same in all circumstances, and this is a key aspect of the Christian life, that we worry less and we trust more. I was thinking about my own life, right? And you can fill these in as you go. I have worries. I worry about my adult kids. You know, what's next for them, how things are going to turn out, if they're going to make the right decisions, if they're going to meet the right people. I worry about like my inability to determine how long I can be like a healthy, active human being. Like, how long can I open pickle jars? I worry about that, right? How long am I going to be able to, like, I don't have grandkids yet, but when I do, am I going to be able to be an active grandpa? I'm around people, and especially around death enough that I go, there's so much that's uncertain. I start to worry about that outcome. I worry about the message and the witness of the Christian life in the world today with the internet, with social media, with kind of how we're shaped and impacted by so many voices that all claim Christ, but they're disembodied from any community engagement or work. There's ideas out there. And I worry a little bit about what that means for those who are not followers of Jesus. And they start to look at, a lot of Christians fight a lot online. And that's right, Jesus said, make sure you fight a lot online. No, he said they'll know you're Christians by your love for one another. So I worry about that. I worry that here at Eastwind, you will have an experience of something today, right now this morning, that will turn you away from Jesus. Not turn you away from Eastwind. Will turn you away from Jesus. Something I say or do, a behavior, an attitude, something you experience in the lobby or the parking lot, something your kids experience, or maybe something you're holding right now, and that will turn you away from Jesus. I worry about that. I worry if the toilets in the women's restroom will ever be replaced with taller ones. Okay? I don't know what that's about, but it's an issue, and I've heard a lot about it, right? So I worry about that. Are we ever going to get bigger? We should wait till the building expansion. Why would we get bigger toilets now? But I don't know. Not bigger toilets, taller toilets. I worry that people I know and love will give up on Jesus because of something adjacent to Jesus, and they'll walk away. And then all that worry creates a physical and an emotional reaction about something that I have little control over and has yet to occur. And since my brain doesn't know what to do in the absence, in that gap, it just fills it with like worry. It catastrophizes. Then I started to go to my trust list. I don't know what you've been thinking about with your worries. I trust, my list is really small. There's people on it. I trust my wife, Emily. I have a few close friends that I trust in that hard skill of trust. Most of all, I trust God. Okay, so maybe it's not in your notes, but I want to give you a framework for this last piece of why community in Christian family can be so challenging for us. And I think it's because what you worry about the most reveals what you value the most. That's not entirely always true, but it's worth wrestling with. What you worry about the most is actually a treasure map to where your values are. And what you worry about the most also reveals where you trust God the least. And that's a kind of a spiritually dogmatic statement, easy for me as a pastor to say. What you worry about the most reveals where you trust God the least. And it's more complicated than that. It's also kind of true. We shouldn't give ourselves just an out because that's a hard statement. So I want to start by just reintroducing you to someone I talk about from time to time. Many of you are familiar with her. Her name's Corrie ten Boom. Corrie was born at the turn of the century, late 1800s in the Netherlands, and her family were followers of Jesus. And so that led to this practice of running these youth camps for kids who are at risk. They had camps for different adults and kids with disabilities who were kind of pushed to the margins in society. And then World War II starts, and the Germans invade the Netherlands, and the ten Boom family has this dilemma that all their youth camps are shut down. They don't know, so they still continue to try to practice their faith, and then eventually this Jewish woman comes to their door on the run from Nazi persecutors, and she needs to be hidden, so they take her in and they hide her, and they end up deciding that what God's calling them to do is to give refugee, or almost like an underground railroad type a process for people trying to flee German oppression, Nazi oppression. And so they create a place called the Hiding Place. It's the name of a book she wrote as well. And in the Hiding Place, there was room for 6 people to hide behind a cupboard door. And those 6 people anyone could come investigate the house, but a neighbor turned them in. And so the Nazis came, they kicked down the walls, they found the hiding place. The whole ten Boom family was dragged off to concentration camps. Corrie's father, is a mockery of a trial. Corrie's father died almost immediately, but her and her sister Betsy were sent to a concentration camp together to Ravensbrück, which was horrific in history. And they said, we can worry about all this uncertainty in front of us, or we can continue to trust God. So that sounds crazy. We're all like, yes, of course, but they actually did it. They were a source of hope for people. They offered encouragement. They ate less and gave their meals away to people. Corrie, one of her famous lines is, no matter how deep the hole you're in is, Jesus is even deeper than that. And she said that from a concentration camp. After a few years, she was released by a clerical error, a mistake. She was let out of the concentration camp just a matter of days and weeks before every woman in her age group died in a gas chamber. So she goes on after this as a follower of Jesus to express how she lived in that world without suffering under the crippling weight of the anxiety of today could be my last day. Today they'll kill my loved ones. And this is what she says. She says, worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It only empties today of its strength. So we're gonna take that idea on the context of Corey's history and look at the teaching of Jesus in Luke chapter 12, Matthew chapter 6, and we're going to look into a couple of the New Testament letters written by Paul and by Peter. But Jesus spoke about worry. He actually had something to say about this dynamic in several of his core teachings. And he's looking at his audience, and keep his audience in mind. The things they're concerned about might be what you're concerned about, but most of them were hungry and wondering if they were going to wake up tomorrow alive and safe. Would they have enough clothes on their back? Some of you, that's the situation you've been in before, you're in now. It's pretty low on Maslow's hierarchy. Others, you get up pretty high where it's like you worry about if you're going to have purpose and meaning, if you're going to be an individual that's unique, and that's higher up there. So if you got all your clothes and everything, you start to worry about other things. But his audience was really tied into, am I going to make it through today? Jesus says in Luke chapter 12, after walking through how the kingdom of God is where God creates a world that you can trust him in all things, he says this, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you'll eat, about your body, what you'll wear, for life is more than food, and the body is more than clothes. So you can see like the issues he knew people were concerned with. Matthew captures a very similar summary that almost sounds like it's a different version. Matthew says this, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. It's not like the most encouraging statement. If you have someone who it needs a sympathy card, if you send them this quote, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's got enough trouble for itself. They're going to be like, thanks, I guess. Like, that wasn't really the good news I was looking for. And it can seem like kind of a strange argument about worry. Cheer up today. Don't worry. Tomorrow could be more terrible. But if you look at the scope of Jesus' teaching, it's not what he's saying. Again and again and again, he's teaching about the importance of the Christian discipline of being present in the life we have in this moment. Now, if you have a background outside of Christian faith, or you look around you in culture, the conversation about like being fully present been around a long time. And it's one that people are constantly wrestling with. Thinkers are writing about and gurus are instructing on. It's like, how do we live in the moment, right? And here's Jesus saying, don't worry about tomorrow. For tomorrow will worry about itself. And there seems to be this overarching reality in the teaching of Jesus where he says, look, what I'm trying to say is not like it could be worse. What I'm trying to say is today's grace is sufficient for today's difficulties. There's no Pollyanna or like silver lining of this conversation. Today's grace will be sufficient for today's difficulties, which means tomorrow's grace will be sufficient for tomorrow's trials. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. And I'm like, okay, so trust is simple, but it's not easy. Jesus isn't saying it will be easy. He's saying it's simple. God's got you. God's got you. It's not complicated, but it will take effort. So we're going to look at the writings of the Apostle Paul, something he said in his letter to the church in Philippi. Now remember, the New Testament, the whole Bible is 66 books, a library of books that point to the purpose and the work of God over human history, from what's wrong with us, who is God, how are we restored. It's all told in the story of Jesus Christ. In the New Testament, we have letters to the churches. Philippi is a city with people trying to follow Jesus who would gather, a little different than this, but they'd gather around, and Paul writes this letter to them. Now, Paul, remember, he was a worrier. And if you know the Bible, you're like, I don't think Paul was a worrier. Oh, he was so worried about people not following the Jewish tradition that he oversaw putting one of them to death, a man named Stephen. That's a lot of worry. He was so worried that he went door to door in Jewish households in Jerusalem, kicking in doors with soldiers and arresting people who claimed they were followers of Jesus. That's a whole lot of worry right there. That's leading to some serious action. And then he's on his way to Damascus, and he has a supernatural encounter with the resurrected Jesus. And he's changed. And he becomes a follower of Jesus. And that same passion he had shifts to a desire to see people know Jesus. And Paul starts churches all around the Mediterranean. And let's look at what he says to this church in the city of Philippi. Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 to 7. He says, rejoice in the Lord always. Remember, trust is simple, but it's not easy. Rejoice in the Lord always. I'll say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And then he gives this really fantastic promise. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Now, if you feel the tension and the weight of anxiety in day-to-day living and the uncertainty of what's coming or what's going to unfold, this is an encouraging text for you. Don't worry about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. It's really, I don't know, I look at this and I go, so Paul says, don't worry about anything. And that feels very like religious broad stroke, right? And think about your life. It's easy for me to stand up here and go, hey, everybody, here's what Jesus wants for you. Don't worry. And then, why are you still worrying? And so you come in my office and you go, hey, I'm struggling with some things. And if I want to be biblical, I look at you and say, don't worry about them. And you go, you know what, honestly, I know that. And it's not helping. It's not helping. And then I start to go, Paul, you also don't know about my life. I mean, you live in this ancient time when things were simpler, right? But I don't know that they were easier. You live in this ancient time. You don't know what it's like to be, you don't know what's going on. You don't know about like the financial stress I live under and the relational dynamics I'm challenged with and my concerns about our nation or my city or the world. You don't know about the doctor's appointment I had last week and the waiting I'm in right now for to get a call back and the biopsy that you don't know about the loved ones and what I'm going through right now with this conversation we're in. You don't know about my kids' health. You don't know about my desires in college. And you start to fill that in, right? You don't know, Paul. Easy for you to say. I mean, you're just the Bible after all. Easy for you to say, don't worry. And I think the challenge is, Paul knows. And he's saying, hey, I want to offer you some life here because this is going to be a real part of being human. Fear and worry are part of our lives. And you're not broken because you have these. Now, Paul wrote most of his letters from prison. So apparently things weren't going great for him. He wasn't in prison because he was, out there breaking the law. He was actually, one of his imprisonments, he was in prison because he went to visit another church to encourage them. And when he was there, they said, hey, we're getting some blowback. People are saying you're not good enough. Could you please go to the temple and demonstrate how good you are? So Paul went to the temple, and while he was there, the crowds got so angry with him, the scriptures tell us that Paul was almost torn in two. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty wild. And then he was arrested. And they put him in chains, and he declared he was a Roman citizen. And so then they couldn't do anything to him without a trial. And they said, okay, well, someone needs to come testify who you are. And nobody showed up. Nobody. All his friends, all his Christian community, all the people who loved him stayed quiet. And so Paul went under 2 years of arrest where they just waited. And then he writes, he says, I know what it's like to have everything I need. And I know what it's like to have nothing I need. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to be bit by a snake. That's a weird detail. I know what it's like to be naked. I know what it's like to be shipwrecked. I know what it's like to be imprisoned. I'm only sharing you a bit of Paul's backstory so you can see that he's not writing from some vacuum like up on a mountain trying to tell us how to cheer up. And he says, don't worry about anything. Anything, means any little thing. Instead, pray about every single thing. It's not unlike what Peter says. Peter's a close follower of Jesus. You know Peter's story arc. Peter was a fisherman who didn't know Jesus, then believed in Jesus, and then denied that he ever knew Jesus, and then re-believed in Jesus, and then died for believing in Jesus. So that's kind of Peter's story here. And Peter had a particular worry. Before Jesus left him, he said, Peter, I'm going to start a church. It's going to be my people are going to be called the church, and you're going to be a big part of that. He went as far as to say, on your shoulders, this is going to be carried. That's a lot of pressure. Peter says it this way, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. The word cast means to throw off as soon as possible. It's not a complicated word. Like if a spider gets on you, I don't know what you do, but most people, if you just let a spider, I don't know, you're kind of weird. But if a spider gets on you and you're like, well, and that's cast it off. Or if you're out hiking and a rattlesnake or any snake, because we don't know what they are right away, right? Walks in front of you and you like, get away from me. I have a problem though. I don't do that. If I'm hiking with my wife, I put her in front of me whenever I think there's a snake. I just feel like I should confess that. I don't know why. I've tried, but this is 28 years of marriage and I still do it. We'll be walking along. I'll see a stick. I think it's a snake. And I like put her in front of me. And she's like, what are you doing? I say, trust me, I'm a good man. I'm a good man, just not when there's a snake in the path. And then I realized today, or I think she's so wonderful, snakes wouldn't bother her or whatever. But it's like cast off is really straightforward. Get rid of it. Peter has the audacity to say, get rid of it. Your worry and your anxiety. Why? Because you can trust God. It's simple, but it's not easy. I want to read to you one of the Psalms. Because if I'm sitting where you are, I kind of go, this whole part of especially if you've been a follower of Jesus for a long time, you know all of this. And you probably feel bad that you still worry. Listen to the psalmist putting all their trust in God. Psalm 55, I just want to read the first 6 verses for you, or a few verses for you. Listen to my prayer, O God. Do not ignore my plea. And you can start to hear the worry creep in. Hear me and answer me. My thoughts trouble me. And I'm distraught because of what my enemy is saying, because of the threats of the wicked, for they bring down suffering on me and they assail me in their anger. And then my heart is at anguish within me. The tears of death have fallen on me. Fear and trembling have beset me. How is this a godly thing to say? Shouldn't this person be saying, I have no worries, God, because you're awesome? They say, fear and trembling have beset me, and horror has overwhelmed me. I love the honesty of the scriptures. And I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly away, and I would be at rest. But I don't. So as for me, I will call on God, and the Lord will save me. And then there's this interesting detail in verse 17. Evening, morning, noon. I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice. And the psalm says, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. I just love the context of how real the journey of the simplicity of not worrying and trusting is. And yet here it is. It's like morning, noon, and night. I call out in my distress. And this is important because worry can feel like a knife in your chest. Some of you know this feeling. It's just lodged there and it's making it hard to operate. It can feel like pressure in your brain. Just this like it's always there. Someone told me once it feels like an imposter has like they know who they are and someone else has snuck in and taken over and they don't know how to get themselves back. An imposter has hijacked your normal self, or like a rain cloud of fear and doubt following you. So I want to end functionally. So I was thinking about what this looks like for us, right? And I've shown you this before, but I want to revisit kind of a visual illustration. So you and I as people, we have worries. We just do, and they're different. Some of our worries are probably small, and others of us feel like our life is kind of driven by them right now. But we have worries, and some of us have very deep, rich faith. Others of you might be like, I'm not sure about, but it's all play, right? We all have some worries, and it can feel like what I'm saying is, all right, you've got your worries, and what you need to do is you need to just put God in your worries. Right? And then you're like, dang it, he doesn't fit. So you spend this is kind of like you're like, I just need to get God. Isn't that what Peter and Paul are saying? Just get God in your worries. How's that working? I think it's a small but important inversion that needs to take place. You have your worries, and you just need to put them, right? Nope. I switched this between the two services. There we go. Real time right here. You have God. You try doing things with 2 stickers on each side. You have God, and you need to put your worries. Now look at this, the visual distinction, all right? This is what Peter and Paul are calling us to. God is big enough for your worries. I am assailed by sorrow day and night. but I give my worries to God because I can trust him. The alternative that we try to navigate in that is we go, I've got my worries, and I try to get God into them. Okay? Think about that dynamic for us real quick. The difference between those two. One is off balance, one feels overwhelming, one feels impossible. The other is how life is meant to be lived. Don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. So Peter and Paul lean into Jesus. They give us the same example of Corrie ten Boom. When you're worried about your kids, pray about it. When you're worried about your singleness, pray about it. When you're worried about your living situation, pray about it. When you're worried about your job, pray about it. When you're worried about a big decision you have to make in finances, life, work, relationships, pray about it. When you're worried about a voicemail on your phone from your doctor and you don't really want to call back, pray about it. When you're worried about if you can afford school or your vocation or a certificate, pray about it. When you're worried about the surgeons that are going to put you on the operating table, pray about it. When you're worried about the direction your life is going, pray about it. I could just keep going, right? When you're worried about, pray about it. When you're worried about, pray about it. They're very simple, but not easy. The work of prayer is a gritty, hard, daily discipline of life. And so I want to give you a way to think about it, what this might look like for you and I. Stop and breathe. It's the first thing we need to do. I think it's so hard to spiritually operate within our worry because we don't stop. We just go in our worry. Stop and breathe. It would look like this. Occupational therapist grabbed me after the first service. They said it looks like this. You breathe in your nose, you smell the cookies. Let's all do that. And you breathe out your mouth and you blow the bubbles. I don't know, but I think it works. Stop and breathe because your body is where your faith lives. And if you try to do faith stuff and ignore your body, it doesn't make any sense. Slow your body down. Get yourself in rhythm. Breathe. Breathe. And then name your worry. God, I am so worried about this MRI. I'm so worried about dropping my kid off in college. I'm so worried about this test. I failed it already and I need to pass it for what's next. I'm so worried about my finances. I'm so worried about this diagnosis. I'm worried about the dental hygienist because that one always hurts my gums. Whatever it is, right? God, I'm so worried. But I know I can give this to you and put it on your shoulder. So you tell God what you need. And then you thank him. This is just a life of faith, following Jesus. It's not something you do sometimes. Like the psalmist, it's something you do morning, noon, and night. And you're not broken because you have to do it morning, noon, and night. You're in a long line of faithful people who are navigating the uncertainties of this world. And you thank him. You say, God, thank you for what you've done in the past, the peace you've given me. Thank you for how time, and this implies a little time with God. How time and time again, in the most uncertain of ways, when I couldn't even see it till after the fact, you have been faithful. And I was thinking about this. On Tuesday, I joined an online funeral for a 40-year-old man named Jeff. Jeff was a high school student years ago when I was a youth pastor in Minnesota, and his girlfriend brought him to youth group, and our habit was, grabbing Taco Bell or Arby's and saying hello. And so I took Jeff to Taco Bell, and he's like, what do you want from me? Like, you're an adult. What's happening here? I said, I thought you would know. This is what we do here. I want you to know Jesus. It didn't happen right there, but over time, Jeff actually became a follower of Jesus. Jeff married that girlfriend who brought him to youth group, and then they had 3 kids, and then Jeff got melanoma. And kind of watched their journey through Caring Bridge, and I watched, them navigate the uncertainty of this. And he went through treatments, and he went through it's gone and it's back, and he went through, there's hope and there's not hope, and some of you know exactly the dynamic I'm talking about. And for a few years, his family, who are all people of faith, it's what they did every day, all day. And I thought, so here's the thing. That funeral was an experience of sad celebration and hope. It wasn't just like we're Christians, we got to say we're excited he's with Jesus. It was a moment like the stories and the accounts and who came and his own family. They were able to sit in that moment of incredible sorrow because for several years of worry, heavy worry, this is what they did. They would name their worry. They would take it to God. They would ask him to be with them. They would pray for healing, which obviously didn't happen. They would sit with God over and over and over, and eventually the melanoma took Jeff's life. He was 40 years old, 3 kids behind. The family all gathered together. And I'm sitting there. I'm listening. It's live streamed. And I go, the only reason that they are where they're at in this moment of great loss is because of the road they walked every single day. I just couldn't find a better test case, a real human experience. And it made me think about, let's go back to Corey. Corey would say, never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. That's the path they walked. That's the path we're invited to walk. And so I want to leave you with this. This is how Paul concludes his conversation about worry. The brain science and the neuroplasticity, and this is so beautiful. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, I want you to think about these things, even in the midst of a life that's overwhelmed with worry. So for a few minutes, and then we're not going to sing a closing song. I'm just going to come up and end us. In a few minutes, I want to invite you to just sit here, stop, name your worry, tell God what you need, thank him, and then I'll close us.
There's a red kite in a dead tree in the park. Something straight out of French New Wave movie. There's a mother with a toddler in her arms, wondering how she's gone.